right, what is up, everybody? Isaac here, Civil Engineering Academy. Excited to be with you on another podcast episode. We do these every once in a while where we go over the NCEES squared report, and we're going to do that this time because they just came out with 2024s. So it's always interesting to see what they got in there. We'll review some of the financials that they've got, including how many people have been taking exams. It's always good information, especially in this you're in this world of exam taking, just to kind of keep your ear to the ground and hearing what's going on in this world. So I'm going to bring my brother Mark on, and we're going to chat about the NCEES squared report for 2024. There's some fascinating stuff in here with the numbers that we're going to find out. And if you need help on your journey to pass, make sure to check us out at civilengineeringacademy.com. But without further ado, let's get to my interview and a walkthrough of the NCEES squared report for 2024 with my brother Mark coming up right after this. There we go. What's going on, Mark?
Hey, glad to be here again. Always a good time.
I'm going to apologize. Something is lagging. We've reset the computers, but we'll power through it.
Yeah, something's got a little bit of a lag here for us today, doesn't it?
Okay, well, I'm going to bring up the report, and we'll just walk through it. Let's add it here to our presentation. So here officially is the Safeguard 2024 annual report from Squared. So if those listening, you can listen to this, but if you want to watch it, we're going to walk through this together and kind of talk about some of the high points. So first point, first thing that comes up really is the president's message. And, he talks about just some certain milestones that they've been hitting. It's kind of a typical president's message, but, the NCEES is marching forward no matter what. So I'm not going to dwell on that very much. Let's get to some of the highlights. Anything here stand out to you, Mark?
Well, just how more international NCEES seems to be getting. So NCEES and the UK's Engineering Council, they've officially adopted a mutual recognition agreement. I think that's kind of significant. I think most Western, I'll say countries, Western culture, there's some reciprocity that's happened, but I think NCEES has kind of helped bridge the gap. They're moving towards fully bridging the gap, so that people that work internationally can get their credentials to go across country, the boundaries of everybody's country that they work in. So that's kind of cool. And then
for me, it looks like
exam updates, cool of course, everything. Yeah. Did you see that?
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, just how everything is, that transition that was started. It's been over 10 years ago. They started doing the computer-based exam. And so they were able to launch that a while ago, and we're almost fully transitioned into that, which has been good. There was some apprehension at first about how that was going to be received and how test scores were going to be affected and how everybody was going to react to that. But it's becoming more and more the commonplace, more and more accepted. And I think it's just kind of become standardized. Don't you think, Isaac?
Yeah, I agree. People are getting used to it being a computer-based format, and you'll see that in the numbers. So let's keep walking through it.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other thing that stands out to me is the if you go back real quick, is that FE ambassador program. So usually, I think a lot of maybe the more progressive type engineering programs around the country had the FE, the pass of the FE test as a requirement. I think that's becoming more and more common as, engineering programs at the universities, accredited universities around the world are recognizing that getting that FE done, right, as a kind of a foundation on your journey towards getting a full credentialed PE designation That's a good idea if it's part of the curriculum, right, for graduation. So I think they're promoting that more and more now.
Yeah, I'm always surprised when people say they didn't have to pass their FE when they went through school. So that's kind of an interesting thing that's happening more and more. So
Yeah.
that they have to pass to graduate.
Right.
Okay, let's jump to committees. So these are just committees that are part of licensing boards that are tasked with, helping create everything they're doing. Any comments on this one?
No comments other than they continue to function. I don't see that. I see the number, the members. The amount of committees has stayed pretty constant. The members have that number's increased, and some of the consultants has increased. But yeah, so I guess they're moving towards more input, broader base of input. As they try to establish the standards and the exact technical subject matter that they're going to cover in the testing, they're getting a lot more input.
Okay, let's dive into this one. This one's kind of been a hot topic about protecting and promoting responsible licensing. There's been some bills passed, and the NCEES tracks these bills. There have been 112 bills. 74% of those in 23 to 24 were bills that were marked and monitored as a priority to watch. Because they're worried about professional licensing kind of being lost in the shuffle of states trying to remove requirements for other industries and disciplines to get the PE or not a professional license. So civil engineers always pipe up and say, don't do that because we need a benchmark and we want competent and safe engineers. But any comments on this one?
Well, that's always interesting to me because if you look at what the public thinks, like if you look at what's the public view on licensure, there's still 75% of the voters believe it's a good idea. So, why is this even a problem with the local representatives in government that represent supposedly the public? Why do they? Why is this even a thing? Is my comment, but most everybody believes it's an important thing. It needs to happen. So why is it even a topic of discussion is what I would ask. And I get that, there may be maybe a little bit of controversy with, testing and the credentials, because it's more of a merit-based type credential, right? That you have to work towards and study hard to be able to get. But they're trying to create competent individuals that are practicing, right? And to be able to have competent individuals practicing engineering, you got to go through at least some kind of a standard of testing to verify their competence. And this is how it's been set up. This is how it gets done. And so it's a good idea to have engineers that are competent because it's benefits everybody. And so I think it's just a function of people. Obviously everybody want to include everybody that wants to be an engineer having a shot at becoming a credentialed engineer. Obviously we want to create those opportunities, but not everybody is necessarily going to be able to get through the tests and become a licensed professional engineer, but it's because they have to meet those standards that are outlined in the testing, right? And that's how the public gets assured that that individual is operating competently. So that's just my thoughts about it.
So I'm curious, they list what the priority bills are, but what actually are they doing to fight these priority bills? Is it just we're throwing money at the problem or what? I don't understand what is actually being done.
Yeah, well, organizations like NCEES, they're really just kind of an advocacy group, right? So they're lobbying to some degree on the engineering community's behalf, right? Trying to make sure that our viewpoints are being voiced within the halls of any legislator, any legislative body, I guess, on the state level. They're just trying to do those advocacy type things that make sure that engineers' voices are being heard before they pass legislation.
Well, it's a hot topic. I see it more and more on LinkedIn, so it's definitely worth covering and something they definitely get covered too. So go read up on that one.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some financial or international influence. It's definitely growing in terms of the agreements they have with other countries and other testing organizations that help to facilitate getting the PE license internationally. And we'll go over some of the numbers here, but it's increasing, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, and it's nice that everything's moving towards, I guess, a kind of a global standardization, if we can call it that. But I think that's probably a good thing. Every individual country having their own organizations for standardization of testing and granting credentials is good, but I think when you can create some agreement between countries, since there are a lot of professionals that work, there's a lot of international design firms, right, that work across internationally, that work across countries, and so it's nice to have some kind of standard that's reciprocal, right, across all of those geographical locations. So my opinion is it's probably a good thing that's happening.
I agree. Yep, all good stuff there. So let's talk about determination of professional competence. So they talk about exam development that happened. They developed 38 exams, 46 in-person meetings, and 8 virtual meetings. But I think the key numbers I care to talk about are these over here in their report, which there was over 88,000 total examinees. Of that, you had over 53,000 FE takers and over 29,000 PE takers. And they break down the percentages. The winner here is the professional surveying was up 27%, but all of them are up quite a bit, including the PE is up 19%. I think people are just let people test the waters on maybe the CBT exam and the new specs, and now they're gearing up for themselves to go take these exams. But what do you think about all that?
Yeah, is that what you think, Isaac? Like there was some pent up demand, there was a contingency of people that were waiting for the CBT stuff to kind of settle.
That's my
opinion.
They
were ready to jump in, and so there was some pent up demand.
Yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts. I mean, it could be off, but I think people were waiting for the spec to change, and now that it's changed, they're coming back to take the exam, and the numbers have increased.
Right. Makes sense. I would agree with that. That's probably what's going on. Because I don't think the overall number of I guess I'm not going to be willing to say that, but until we look at the next batch of data. But the number of engineering graduates, it continues to go up, but it's not like as a percentage, it's not as big of a drastic change as what we're seeing here, right? Year over year.
Let's bring up, you've got something to share that tracks all the FEPE takers over the last few years, and we can talk about how these numbers relate to the data we've been tracking. Can you bring that up?
Okay, you ready for that data? Okay, so
yes,
if we pull up, this is the report that actually it's a spreadsheet that's got everything that let's see. Here we go. You see that?
Okay, got it added.
Go. So here's our year. Yeah, here's our year over year numbers. So this is this first category we're going to talk about, of course, is the FE data. And so this first box of data as we look from the year 2016 through 2024. You can see how many FE examinees there are year over year. And it looks like those numbers have steadily increased. We had a big drop in 2020. That was a COVID-related thing, of course. And then you can see those numbers jumping right back up and then steadily increasing. There was a pretty big jump for 2024 for the FE takers, but engineering grads, those numbers are steadily increasing. It looks like we've dropped off in 2023. Don't know what 2024 is going to yield yet, but that's why the engineering grads it's been in that 140K kind of a range for a while, and I would anticipate 2024 being somewhere in that neighborhood as well. So that's why on that previous graphic, it's kind of an anomaly that there was a jump in so many test takers given the computer-based testing format. But civil FE exam volume and pass rates, so you can get a quick look at the first-time taker rates. And they always, 67% historically has kind of been the range, that 2/3 range. The last 3 years, it looks like it's dropped to about 60%. Do you think that's because the CBT format's harder, Isaac? What do you think's happening there?
I think it can be harder. It's not people. You've got alternative item types and stuff. I think maybe people are scared of what those are, but maybe it is more challenging, and maybe they want to keep it around 60%. I don't know, but that is a surprising number. The repeat takers seems to be the same, if not slightly, a percent less, but it is interesting that the first time takers pass rate is almost, 4 or 5% less than what it used to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. But the repeat takers is about the same as it always been, So, yeah, just interesting to see those trends. FE exam volume by year, that looks like it continues to go up. And that would probably correlate with the increase in engineering grads that continues to increase. Civil FE preferred testing windows. Sometimes these are interesting to look at. Which quarter of the year do engineers prefer to take their tests? And I mean, looking at this, Isaac, it just depends on the year. In 2020, everybody got it stuffed in Q1, Q2. Obviously, that's when all the lockdowns were happening, and that number dropped to 15%, and then we went back up to 25 and 31. But man, after COVID year, it's like almost a quarter, almost 25% each quarter. It's not exactly, but it's about a quarter of the people every quarter. It's pretty even, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm surprised, the winner here looks between Q1 and Q2. I imagine Q1 because most everybody has a New Year's goal to get it knocked out, so they take it that first quarter. But I think Q2, maybe you're in a zone where, I don't know, maybe school's winding down. I'm not sure, but that seems to be the winner in terms of the volume.
Right. Okay, let's switch over to the PE stats now. So here's our total PE volume. So that's actually, it's dropped a little bit. We're almost back to 2018, 2019 kind of numbers. But there was definitely a dip there. 2020 obviously was the biggest dip, where things almost got cut in half. But in 2024, we're getting back up into that 30,000 range. What's your thoughts on that, Isaac? That's, other than the anomaly, the 2020 COVID year, what's your thoughts on those fluctuations?
Yeah, I find that really interesting because we had the most in 2018. usually that corresponds to how many engineers we have out there, but it almost feels like um, people have less of a desire to get the PE, and I don't know why that is the case, but those numbers will naturally go up as you get more graduates through school and into the workforce. I imagine you're going to get over 30,000 in 2025, and hopefully the trend continues. But every time these guys make a spec change or a drastic change like CBT, there's always a dip in test takers. So maybe that goes into how often they actually want to change these things because they see dips in revenues because of it.
Yeah. So we might be seeing just a little bit of a reaction to the computer-based testing and kind of waiting for things to settle a little bit, maybe. Could be it, but okay. Civil P exam volume and pass rates by discipline. So this one's always interesting. So again, we've got first-time takers versus repeat takers, and we go down through the years. Things are pretty even. We got it looks like the highest pass rate is water resources, and that's pretty much the case every year. That has the highest pass rate, and that's what we've seen, right? As well, Isaac, over the years that people ask us, what's the easiest discipline PE test to take?
2024 is the only anomaly.
If you look at the numbers, it's water resources. Yeah, well, but
2024 is the only
on
odd
the pass rate
year for water resources because it died. Yeah, on the pass rate.
Yeah. But when we answer that's the quote unquote easiest discipline.
Yeah, I got to go look back at the data because the NCEES produces those passing rates, and we've tried to been tracking them. But there was a period when water resources dipped as the lowest pass rate among all exams, which is kind of a first that I've ever heard of. So I don't know if they're purposely trying to make that one harder or what, but historically it always has the highest it's kind of bounces between transportation and water resources. All of them are difficult though in their own way. But historically that's the case.
Yeah. But you look at like 2021, you're right. That's a little bit of anomaly there. But water resources is fairly consistent about being the quote unquote easiest one to pass because that's got the highest pass rate. But then the repeat takers is kind of an interesting stat. It depends on what discipline you're looking at here, but it's interesting that the structural repeat takers is pretty high through the years. But it used to be around that 33% mark, and then now that we're down into 2023, we got up in the 40s on repeat takers on most of those disciplines. 2024, water resources had 51% on the repeat takers, so that one really jumped.
That's great.
So, and then just your civil P exam overall, first time takers. So this one isn't broken out, of course, by discipline. And you can see that the pass rate is 66%, and then it kind of drops, right? We get down below 60%, and now we're about right at 60% as far as the pass rate goes.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at the data. Know if there's anything preparing for the exam. Your first time taking it's going to be your best shot of passing because you're going to put in all the energy to do it. But don't be discouraged by the repeat taker numbers. If you do that, you'll never try again. But it just means you just keep marching forward. You will get it as long as you don't give up. So, put in the best effort first. If you don't get it, just keep going.
Yeah, that can be discouraging, that repeat taker number for the repeat takers. It's like you're kind of getting kicked while you're already down, huh? And you're like, oh, I only got a 40% chance of passing it. the second time I take it. It's not very encouraging, but you're right. You can't
Yeah,
give
and I
up.
interviewed at the time the director of the exam making with NCEES during COVID because everyone was, not leaving. And I brought up that question: why is the repeat taker so bad? And he basically said, well, the guys passing the first time are basically your best, and those repeating aren't. So that's as simple as that. But there was no magic to it. So, but don't. I mean, I wasn't
Yeah.
encouraged by those words, but give it your best shot and just keep going.
Yeah, it's
All right. Well, let's jump off of this
it,
then. Go
it's
back to the
it's just
report.
the way it is. Okay.
All right, so they jump into computer-based testing. The timeline, obviously, we don't need to cover all this, but it spans from 2010 all the way to 2024. The latest is the CBT PE structural examination that hit in 24. This one's very controversial too. I've heard people do not love this format for taking a structural exam to earn your SE,
Yeah,
which is kind of a pain in the butt.
I've heard some. As you know, I work with a lot of structural engineers in the industry, and I've heard some negative comments about the current format for sure.
And the
I think
pass rates
eventually
for
they'll get
that
it
are
right
extremely low.
and
They're like
everything will work
20.
out. But yeah, but there's definitely some bumps there that they got to get smoothed out. But I'm hearing a lot of the same things.
But the gist of all of this is that it's gone computer based fully. So all the exams they administer, I don't know of any that are paper based anymore, unless I'm missing something.
No, I believe you're right.
Okay, this one's kind of interesting. The NCEES now offers, an interactive FE practice exam now that looks probably similar to what the real exam is. That's interesting. We have developed that a long time ago. So if you're looking for something, we have that on our courses. So check that out if you want to. But what's interesting is the exam being administered internationally. We've had over 1,600 FE exams administered and 475 PE exams, and it continues to grow. It seems like internationally, I think people are looking at this. There's always interest in getting some sort of licensing, I think, in the United States, or that's recognized also around not only the nation but the world. And so maybe there's growing interest in this, and as they continue to grow internationally, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's that interest internationally. I mean, you see the countries that are getting agreements with NCES and then establishing a records program, right? That's something that we talk about. Engineers that work internationally across different countries, and that's a valuable thing to have because then their credential follows them, and they're not having problems practicing in a country where there's an agreement. So I think it's a good thing. It's a good streamlining, efficient thing that's happening with that.
Yeah, my only other comment is I would love to know from our audience if you took this exam internationally. If you're listening to this, I'd love to know how that went for you, what the process was like, if it was difficult to do. I just want to, it would be awesome to get more feedback on that process if you're taking it internationally. Okay, let's jump to the next one, CPC tracking. So one of the key benefits of having an NCEES account, I think, is actually doing this CPC tracking, which is continuing professional competency. I mean, I like calling it PDHs or continuing education CEUs. There's a bunch of names, but they're calling it CPC. But it's an easy place to store your records, and it's nice that you can use this to transfer or get your PE with other states and such. It creates a record for you, so it's handy. Are you using this, Mark?
Yeah, I've got an NCES record, and I use this to track my CPCs. I like to call them continuing education units, CEUs. That's just because my local licensing board calls them that. But yeah, I use this to some extent, and it's helpful.
Sounds
Helpful
good.
to keep track of things.
Okay, other than that, the report just goes in that they have initiatives to help K through 12. They're always looking to expand. They want to connect with higher education. They talk about money that they give away for engineering and surveying. So that's part of their initiative, is to try to award really cool things that are going on in the engineering and surveying world. It's all tied to their financials. And then they have definitely initiatives to promote licensure. They want people to get their license. So it's all good stuff there. They talk about scholarships that they also give. And I think we hit this before, but they always hit it in all of their reports, earning an NCEES exam badge, which for the FE and FS you can earn. This is through Credly. And so you can earn this, and it displays a digital badge on your social media profiles. It kind of just says, hey, you are an FE or an FS. I don't know why they don't have one for PE, but they got them for FE.
Can I get one of those for my hard hat or something, Isaac?
Yeah, I'll get you a sticker for that.
That's what I want. I want a sticker for my hard hat.
What else do they cover? Sharing license. They talk about their social media campaigns. So they're trying to broaden their reach. That is what it is. Everyone has social media. Senior staff. So if you care about who's on the board of directors, that's all listed here, where they're coming from. I thought it would be interesting to sit in this room and hear what they're talking about, but probably is pretty boring, I bet. But what do you think?
Well, yeah, we were talking about this a little bit before. Yeah, I mean, it's cool to be on some of these different boards. I've been on my fair share, and I think it'd be interesting. And you get to know people in the industry that you wouldn't otherwise get to know. But the big thing here is that you can look down the list and see that everybody looks like they're experienced, credentialed, qualified individuals that are on the board of directors.
Yep, I agree. So next they go into financial stuff. They show, I guess, the accountant, the bean counter. He doesn't have an NCEES approved calculator for the exam he's taking, but that's okay. Maybe he's just crunching numbers.
That's right. That was the first thing you noticed, Isaac. Where's his NCEES approved calculator? That's not right. Oh wait, he's just a financial guy.
Well, I know we're kind of butting up on our time with this, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time. But why don't you talk about the revenue? So they made $50 million, but you want to talk about this? The next few pages is just kind of their books and where their money's going. So what are your thoughts
their
about
balance sheets and all that stuff? Well, I mean, it's structured like a similar nonprofit organization. So when they report their total revenues and where they're allocating their money, their financial resources, they subtract their expensive, and then their change in net assets is supposedly what they can apply to future expansion if they've got goals for that. But a lot of that gets applied to there's member support services, actual direct member services. There's always cost for meetings and outreach events that they're having. But the change in net assets, typically for organizations like this, they're trying to roll back into the organization. And sometimes they like to create, little buffers for maybe some anticipated down years. But they're usually rolling that back into the organization, coming up with more, maybe they need more outreach programs, or wherever they think they need to allocate those assets, those net increase in assets. They're usually trying to dump that back into the organization and grow the organization. So.
Well, the next pages are just, the financial statements of the company. I don't know if there's really anything to point out here other than the summary that we already covered. So,
no, those are just the balance sheets.
Through that.
You don't want to grind to that.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Appreciate everyone jumping on and listening to this. It's a fascinating report. It's an industry that's growing, and we need to be credentialed. So earning your FE and your PE is going to launch your career into great places, and we want to be there to help you on the journey to get there. So if you have any comments about this or concerns, I'd love to hear them. But appreciate Mark jumping on. Mark, any last comments? We'll wrap this up.
No, thanks for inviting me again. It's just what you said. Things are growing. Civil engineering as a profession is just a great thing to be involved with right now. It's happening, man. There's a lot of opportunities, so it's a good industry to be in.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for doing this with me, Mark. We'll see you in another one.
Okay, thanks.